Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this special public meeting of the board to order. With regard to attendance, we have all the trustees. Student trustee Mohammed sends regrets because he's writing exams, so we understand what that's about. But I need a motion now to approve the agenda. Trustee Nelson, trustee Leclerc, all those in support? It's the same group, just, yeah. All those in support of the agenda? Any opposed? Thank you, that's carried. I'm going to ask trustee Leclerc to present the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous people who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenape, and the allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederation, the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis.
Thank you very much. Before we move to item D, I would just like to make a few remarks. As the chair, I would like to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. It is a little bit unusual that we have a special board meeting just prior to our budget meeting next week, but I'm pleased to see you here. I ask that you respect the fact that this is a proper meeting of the board with rules and regulations for procedure. We ask for everyone to be cooperative and respectful of the meeting. And I want to do a special welcome before I forget to our longtime friend Betty Turner from Home and School, who has also joined us tonight. Betty. Those of you who don't know, Betty is a very strong advocate of public education, has been attending board meetings for over 30 years. And for health reasons, she's had to miss some meetings, but otherwise, her heart is always with us. And tonight, we're very pleased to see her in person. So welcome, Betty. Good to see you. You're welcome. You're most welcome. We don't normally, I also want to clarify, we don't normally have delegations speaking to a special board meeting. So I used my executive privilege, if you want to call it that, and decided to allow delegations to come to speak on the budget. We have been all winter gathering public consultation on the budget. The past few days, we've received many messages, emails, phone calls, some very respectful, some not. And it's good to see that people have opinions on our budget. So I decided to allow people to apply to be a delegate tonight under the rules of delegation. And I just wanted to make it clear. I did put a message out to trustees. I didn't get any objection back from trustees with regard to that chair's ruling, if you will. But we're always open to hearing public input on our budget. And I'm sure that the delegations tonight will be passionate and emotional because this is a very difficult topic. And, we need to address our deficit. That's without question, but the way we go about doing it is open for discussion. So I just ask that the delegations remain respectful in their remarks, and we understand for some of you it might be difficult because it's so emotional, but we're not your enemy. We're here to hear what you have to say. So with that, I'm going to call up the first delegation, Jacqueline Andersich. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And you have 10 minutes to bring us your message.
Out a bit. Excuse me. Hello? Okay. Hello, everybody, and hello to Ms. Houston. Thank you for the personal phone call today to discuss my speech. I appreciate it. So, my name is Jacqueline Naders. I join the many others who have spoken of their family experiences and the benefits of the long-term sustainability of the RISE program and the cuts to special education. I'm a single parent with a 7-year-old child who is diagnosed with a learning disability and concerns regarding his speech sound skills development. After I observed my son struggle in an all-inclusive style classroom in the Catholic board, I made the difficult decision to transfer him to the public board for grade 1. Despite receiving an IEP, he struggled with letter recognition and math, leading to feelings of embarrassment and isolation. It made me sick to my stomach to watch him come home and tell me that he played by himself again. As we know, kids can be very mean when you are different. Many days he pretended to be ill or he would be in tears because nobody wanted to be his friend. The response from the school was that he was fine. Although as a mom, I knew that he was not the case. He just wasn't causing any problems. So he wasn't setting off any alarm bells. By the end of grade 1, my son received an invitation to participate in the RISE program. Although I was hesitant at first because of the potential social stigma, I decided to look into the advantages and eventually embrace the opportunity. Through the program and additional private tutoring sessions each week, my son has been able to excel despite struggling previously. Since September of 2023, he's become proficient in letter identification, developed reading skills, gained confidence, and formed friendships. The difference in his attitude and academic progress is incredible. This year, he wants to go to school, which is indicative of how the program has positively affected him. Just last week, I asked him what his favorite subjects were, and his response was math and reading. I firmly believe it's a collaborative result of the RISE program and his private tutoring. Additionally, it was a challenge to retain services in speech therapy due to the lack of resources and the long waiting lists. Initially, he received services from the John McGivney Center. However, he was discharged despite having many remaining speech goals. His supports were followed up by the school speech pathologist for a short 2 blocks of speech and language through the school, as services are limited to only grade 2, providing merely consultative support thereafter. Any reduction in these services will cause further backups for these supports. How can we consider taking them from an already underserviced need? I'm very concerned about them returning to a full-time traditional classroom setting because I fear he will academically and socially struggle, resulting in feeling embarrassed, overwhelmed, and isolated once again. Despite not exhibiting outward behavioral problems, I worry that he may be overlooked by teachers because he won't be causing any issues. A direct quote from a teacher who's expressed their concerns to me. When we have class sizes of at least 30 students and students with IEPs, it is much harder to teach RISE students language and math at a much lower level than the rest of the class. You do not have the time to spend with them to make sure they understand what is expected at their level when it comes to dividing up your time. I'm sorry, but they will get much less of my attention when they would be if they were in the RISE program with their teacher. They require more assistance, so if you're helping another 30 students, they will be waiting a long time and have much more time to be distracted or to distract others. Let's call it what it looks like, a possible cost-saving measure as the board is over budget and looking for places to save money. I personally think that the RISE classroom provides a safe place for the students with learning disabilities to build their academic confidence in language and math. If they were learning these subjects in their homeroom class, their peers would see the academic level and they were lurking on and would cause embarrassment. And without proper supports in the classroom, these students would continue to struggle academically and fall further behind. By providing a small space for these students and with direct support from a teacher, these students work harder and can focus on what they were learning without worrying about what others think. I've personally witnessed students come out of their shell and achieve both academic and social success being in the RISE program. These students need RISE. They need a small workspace. They need more support from a teacher, and they unfortunately would not get that in a classroom of 20 to 30 students. They're excited to come to RISE. They're excited to learn at a level they can understand and achieve marks that they wouldn't get in the regular class. As you can see, the RISE program is not just an educational initiative, it's a lifeline for students facing challenges. It provides tailored support and resources to help them succeed academically and develop crucial life skills. It also creates a sense of belonging and community, which is essential for their emotional and social development. Not only does the RISE program benefit the students, but it also provides relief and peace of mind for their families. By continually investing in the program, we can address learning challenges early on and reduce the need for more intensive interventions in the future. Students who succeed in RISE are more likely to graduate, pursue higher education, and become productive members of society. The program aligns with district's commitment to equity and inclusion. All students, regardless of their abilities, deserve access to quality education. By maintaining the program, we uphold these values and provide equitable opportunities for all students. We have a legal and ethical obligation to provide appropriate special education programs and services for exceptional students. By cutting the RISE program and other resources in special education, we risk legal challenges and betray the ethical duty to support every child's right to an education. We must consider the voice of parents who trust our school system to educate their children. When we cut special education, we create uncertainty and anxiety for these families who already face significant challenges. Referencing the most recent census data completed by Tana Turner, there are gaps in academic achievement, higher suspension rates, increased bullying, and lower sense of well-being for children with disabilities when compared with all other students. This is a sign that we need to do something, that we support all students. I'm also greatly concerned with the lack of supports available to assist our children in their needs. There appears to be a nationwide epidemic. This inclusion without support is just abandonment, is deliberate sabotage for both the education of the student involved and all the other students in the class in which inclusion is supposedly done. How does the province expect to provide appropriate support should they move to an inclusive model if they cannot meet the needs as is? Look at what happened in Trenton, Ontario, where a 16-year-old boy with special needs tragically died after allegedly being left alone in a room while he suffered from an epileptic seizure. I'm not blaming the teachers here, but due to a lack of resources, they're forced to choose who to teach and who to support. 42% of elementary schools across Ontario face staff shortages daily, as is, and now a child has died. When will our government notice that we need more funding and support for children with special needs? This is a funding problem, not a budget problem. Removing RISE and special education services without a plan to transition to a new model is irresponsible. Has the board created plans to partnerships in place so when children and families need services, they know where to go and how to navigate external resources? Our school board and government needs to do more to help these kids. And it's recently come to my attention that on PD Day, some of the staff participated in a workshop on a book titled I Belong, written by Michael Jacques, who has autism and intellectual disability. The author cannot read or write and used voice to text to write this book for grades K to 8. Every child matters, and yet resources and books dedicated to empowering students with disabilities are not board purchased for students, expecting teachers to purchase these resources out of their own pocket. As Tana Turner indicated in her speech, is important for these students themselves to be reflected in board materials. The board says every child matters, but it appears that only if the child falls within groups that are considered politically important. We need to stop allowing cuts that contribute to targeting our already marginalized community. Some of the most qualified trained staff has already experienced these cuts. To name a few, 21 education teachers, 4 social workers, 2 speech paths, 1 psychologist, 1 communicative disorders assistant have already been provided layoff notices. How is this even considered when teachers are already overwhelmed? This places more work and stress on them. It's no wonder the absenteeism rate is as high as it is. With continued cuts, you can be assured you'll be taking more time off, either sick or stress leave. In other boards, we're seeing untrained temporary replacements cover off these positions. How does it not invite future problems? Why are we allowing this? The cuts that have been made are minuscule in comparison to the deficit, which raises the question, why would the board cut people who work directly with children whose salary is not impacting the deficit? These children are underserviced and unsupported as is. It's shameful that the Director of Education suggests there's a duplication of services happening as if they're over-supported. As a group, we need to band together and stand against the government. It's no coincidence that our Minister of Education has changed hands when so many school boards are experiencing deficits and cuts and now a death of a child. In conclusion, by preserving and investing in special education, we're making a powerful statement that every student matters and that we are committed to helping each one reach their full potential. I urge you, esteemed members of the Greater Essex County District School Board, to say no to the further cuts to special education, as any cuts are a misguided decision. Let us continue to reach individual success every day for ensuring a brighter future, more inclusive future for all of our students. Option 1 is the only option that makes sense. Every student matters. Thank you. Thank you.
I will ask trustees if they have questions for clarification, but just for, I just want to make a couple points for the benefit of the other four presenters. I'm glad that this delegation recognizes that it's a funding issue, which is from the province. It's not us to determine the funding at the local level, but having said that, I don't appreciate disparaging remarks targeting a staff person in the board. That's inappropriate. This is not a problem put on the back of one staff person. So that part would not be appropriate in any further presentations.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what was disparaging about what I said. I was just recognizing comments that were made last week that I didn't agree with.
I'm not going to debate, but
Okay,
you targeted one staff person. Trustee Burgess?
For clarification only, ma'am, through you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm just going to try to understand how you made your decision to choose Greater Essex. I heard that your child entered at grade 1.
Yes.
So I want to know, because you talked about a full inclusive model versus RISE program and the assessments, et cetera. I think I heard that correctly. But you were at another board, a coterminous board, serving the same community. You chose that for a reason. I'm assuming there were 2 years there, junior and senior kindergarten?
Yes.
And how did you find out about Greater Essex? Thinking that somehow we could meet the needs when another publicly funded school board is,
Sure, I can
you're
answer.
already enrolled. Did they tell you? Did you find out?
Okay, can I answer? So, yes, we were at the Catholic School Board first for proximity reasons to where we live. However, they weren't meeting our needs in terms of getting my son his IEP and the inclusive model. I was actually witnessing him through the online services and how the inclusivity model was not working for him at that time. So they taught all students of all different levels all day for all programs. And I personally witnessed how that was not working for him. So because of the online training or the online learning at the time, I was able to see that. I had spoken with a number of parents, teachers, and whatnot that had said that the public school board had more resources to handle disabilities and to deal with that. At that time, I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what they were called. I learned about that later. So, but I mean, obviously, if there's more resources that are available to him, I'm going to pursue that, because if he's not getting his needs met at the Catholic board at that time, that's why I decided to move him. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So in the programs you're at, in the public school board that you're at, the coterminous board, you heard amongst them that, well, maybe you want to look over there because they've got something over there.
It's not a look over there. It's just their experiences with their children. It's not like that.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much.
Another trustee on this side? This side? Trustee Chin, your question for clarification?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Just for clarification, because my English is not very good, you mentioned that we favor, particularly marginalized group and kind of ignore the students who really need help, that marginalized group who really need help. Could you explain more about it?
I'm not really understanding the question. I'm sorry, but
Did you mention particularly marginalized group? Yeah.
children with disabilities in general are a marginalized group. There's other groups that are considered marginalized as well and have specific envelopes for those groups, or this group does not. I don't understand why it does not. I know that's not a decision at your level, but I'm just saying that, they should be recognized as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is Jessica Irwin, please. And again, you also have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Is it okay if I start? Can you hear me? Okay. First, I'm just going to start by saying Happy Pride Month, everyone. Esteemed members of the Board of Trustees, my name is Jessica Irwin, and I am a proud social worker and attendance counselor with the GECDSB for nearly 10 years. As the union rep for social work, I'm here tonight to advocate on behalf of our tremendous social work and attendance counseling team. A team who stands to be cut by 1/4 tonight if option 2 or 3 are adopted. Taking precedence over jobs, however, is the mental health and well-being of the students that we service at our school board. I stood before you 2 years ago when our team faced layoffs. 2 out of the 3 attendance counselor positions were eliminated. This left our social work team to absorb and manage all of the high school attendance files in addition to the elementary attendance files, thus leaving only 1 RAC staff left to dedicated solely to attendance. This is now the 3rd time in 5 years that our group is facing layoffs. This is leaving us with, if we get these cuts, this is going to leave us with only 11 social worker and attendance counselors and 1 RAC left to service all 62 schools and carry a caseload of over 2,000 students. 2,000. If staff absenteeism is the root of the debt, cutting 4 social workers' positions will not solve the board's structural deficit. We do not get replaced even when we take time off. Even if we take 4 months time off, we absorb the caseload within. Our team believes in this board's strategic plan, a plan which prioritizes student success and well-being. The board has stated that it considers mental health and well-being to be a crucial part of the community's success, and it has committed to provide a safe and supportive community at all of its schools. In a post-pandemic world, students face an array of challenges, both academic and personal, that affect their ability to function in the classroom. We know that with Maslow's hierarchy of need, no learning can take place if a student's basic needs are not met. Reducing our student social work support has a direct impact on their ability to focus and learn in the classroom. So I want to break down what exactly our role is so that when you make this decision, it is an informed one. Members of our team play a dual role, one of an attendance counselor who re-engages students back into school when they're at risk of dropping out, and one that directly counsels and consults with students. But the truth is, we do so much more, and I could never explain it in 10 minutes. We are the crisis workers. So when there's a student who's actively suicidal, we go immediately out to that school and we assess their level of risk. We then develop a safety plan and navigate next steps and coordinate a community response. Unfortunately, these crises are far too frequently. We are the trauma responders. When a tragic incident occurs impacting our school's community, school social workers provide an immediate coordinated response to these schools. So school social workers provide assistance to school administrators and offer direct grief counseling that day to any student impacted. Administrators, school staff have expressed their sincere appreciation that they get direct, immediate access to an expert in the field to help students cope with these tragic events. And we are specially trained in trauma, grief, and loss. We are also expertly trained to assess violent threat risks. So we help prevent potential acts of school violence through engaging in a violent threat risk assessment protocol. When a student makes a violent threat against a school, we are the core part of a team who analyzes the student, the individual, and the threat. And then we create a comprehensive plan to protect our students, our schools, and our community. So in addition to all of those roles, we're also the attendance counselors. It really is brilliant, actually, because we play this dual role, and attendance is so complex. With mental health intersecting with family dysfunction, individual trauma converging with social skills and peer relationships, self-confidence clashing with academic challenges, and addictions overlapping with housing and food insecurity. A student who is chronically absent and at risk of losing a pathway to a high school diploma requires more than just a robocall. They need a skilled, compassionate, persistent response to re-engage them back into school. They need someone who cares. We can offer that direct counseling without the wait or transportation barriers. We then help them get back into school, create goals. We advocate for them within the school for accommodations, and then connect them to community. Our team is rare. It's rare because we generate revenue for our board. Collectively, our team here has 822 open attendance file cases this school year alone. Post-pandemic, we are seeing a higher number of referrals for our students in grade 1 through 4 for very high absenteeism. Every year that passes, these students become more and more disconnected from school, and over time, these are the students that are on the verge of dropping out. When our team, makes contact with the family, we can keep them on the enrollment registry. And not only that, we keep them on a positive pathway. When we keep them on the enrollment registry, we save our board $11,000 per student a year. If you do that math, and I'm a social worker, so I don't do math, that is upwards of a potential $9 million in revenue a year that our team can affect. We are the advocates for our 2S LGBTQIA+ students. If you take a look at our student census, it clearly tells you that student mental health concerns are at an all-time high. In the census data, only 46% of our 2S LGBTQ students felt a sense of belonging, and that is because of our school's homophobia and transphobia that they experience within. Not our schools, but students. Our board recognized this need, and they came up with an amazing initiative 2 years ago to hire a social worker assigned to our 2S LGBTQ students. A social worker with lived experience and professional expertise who is dedicated to working solely with this vulnerable group of students. This resource has been available to all of our schools and to all of our 2S LGBTQ students across our board. This staff has assisted in creating 8 new GSAs. They have helped in creating new administrative policies and procedures and have been invaluable not only to our students, but to our system as a whole. This unique role is not specially funded or protected, nor does it fall under the equity branch. This board added it because they know that our 2S LGBTQIA+ students are some of the most vulnerable students. Our 2S LGBTQ students make up 40% of homelessness in Canada. They have dropout rates of 28 to 32% and are 7 times more likely to attempt suicide. And these students, they can't just ask their parents for counseling because that could be outing them. But with us, they can do so without their gender and sexuality being questioned. This staff has already received their layoff, and this role will be eliminated by September 1st, 2024 if you vote option 2 and 3 tonight. So where does this leave our 2S LGBTQ students? We have tremendous community partners who specialize in mental health, but their wait lists are long. They are so long that one of our top mental health support providers has stopped taking wait list names altogether, and they have for several months. Can't even get on the wait list, okay? They cannot keep up with the demand. We respect these agencies. We worked for these agencies. We collaborate with these agencies, but they cannot do what we do inside of the schools. We have relationships with our administrators, CYWs, EAs, LSTs, trusted ones, where we can work collaboratively together to create unique solutions for our students. The idea that mental health services that are readily accessible in the community is simply an illusion. Even if there were no wait lists, there are time constraints, transportation barriers, accessibility concerns, especially when you consider our students in the county. To our knowledge, no other school board this year is making as big a cut to mental health staff. It does not appear to be the norm across the boards with the same services. So how is it that other school boards with the same funding and same deficits are finding a way to manage their budget without cuts to mental health? Trustees, superintendents, Director Houston, we love our jobs. We feel grateful to be able to do what we do every day, knowing the huge, significant impact that we make on our students and our families. In closing, we ask you for this. We ask that you stand behind the GECDSB's mission and values and keep student mental health and well-being a priority. We ask that you select option 1 in the proposed budget and specifically ensure that no layoffs occur within our PSSP bargaining group. We ask that you consider moving the 2S LGBTQIA+ social work role under equity and work on securing funding for this role so that it never has to be vulnerable to a loss again. In summary, we leave you with one final question. And that is to ask yourselves, are students' lives really worth balancing the budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Irwin. If you could just clarify for me, I believe that you have a provincial association and the social workers, and I just wondered if there are lobbying efforts going on with your group for provincial funding for these positions, because I believe we're funded for maybe one social worker for the whole system. So I just wonder what kind of lobbying is going on to the provincial government.
It's a very good question. I had understood actually that through School of Mental Health Ontario, it was one social worker per high school that we were funded for, but I don't know that, I haven't gotten that confirmed, but that was what School of Mental Health Ontario had provided to us.
I would encourage your provincial group
Yeah.
to be active in lobbying the provincial government, because I don't think there's anyone in this room that disagrees with anything you said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions for clarification? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming tonight. And I would like to call up we've had a substitution on D3. It's the same organization, but a different person is presenting tonight. So Paula Filingeri, I hope I'm saying that correctly, will be making the presentation instead of Mandy Head.
Good evening, Madam Chair and esteemed trustees. I'm Paula Filingeri, and I'm a proud speech-language pathologist with 25 years of experience. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to highlight the vital role that speech-language pathologists, otherwise known as speech paths or SLPs, and communicative disorders assistants, otherwise known as CDAs, play in fostering student success within the Greater Essex County District School Board. It is imperative that you understand the detriment to our students, families, educators, colleagues, the Speech Language Services Department, our special education services, and most importantly, our school board, if the proposed options 2 and 3 are implemented. 5 years ago, our board experienced significant reductions to speech language services throughout the system in the loss of 2 full-time SLP positions, with only 1 position eventually being recalled. Please strongly consider that if you choose to vote for budget options 2 and 3, or 3, the board will lose 24% of its speech language team, which represents about a quarter of speech language services across the entire system. This is a significant reduction to a single department within special education that provides frontline support to our most vulnerable students. This deep cut to school-based speech-language pathology services will result in fewer SLPs and just 1 remaining CDA to provide services across all our schools, resulting in students and classroom teams receiving significantly less support with long wait times. Currently, speech-language services across the board include 9 SLPs and 1.5 CDAs. An SLP supports, on average, 190 students per school year, in addition to classroom-based collaboration from kindergarten to grade 2, consultative support to gains and steps teams, participation in welcome to kindergarten events, transition meetings for incoming students with high needs, professional development, board initiatives, and language and literacy projects. A CDA supports on average 240 students per school year across roughly 20 schools, in addition to classroom-based interventions, provision of resources and modeling, communication strategies for classroom teams who are supporting students with high needs. Speech and language skills form the cornerstone of communication, essential to every aspect of our lives. As educators, it's our responsibility to ensure that every student has the tools and support they need to excel in this fundamental area. First and foremost, let's consider the significance of effective communication in the learning process. Communication isn't just about speaking. It's about understanding, expressing ideas, and connecting with others. Without strong communication skills, students struggle to comprehend instructions, participate in classroom discussions, and express their thoughts and feelings effectively. Imagine trying to learn math, science, or history without the ability to communicate clearly. It's like trying to build a house without a solid foundation. Moreover, school board SLPs and CDAs play a vital role in addressing speech and language disorders. These disorders can range from difficulties with speech sound production, fluency, and overall speech intelligibility to challenges with language comprehension, expression, and social communication skills development. SLPs and CDAs are also the primary service providers for students who require alternative forms of communication and customized strategies to function within daily routines. Left unaddressed, these challenges can hinder a student's academic progress, social development, and overall well-being. However, with accessible support and timely intervention, students can and do overcome these obstacles and can thrive in school and beyond. As we all know, early intervention is key. Research has shown that treating speech and language challenges in the early years leads to better functional, academic, and social outcomes for students. By identifying and addressing these challenges early on, we can prevent them from escalating into more significant and complex problems down the road. Early intervention sets students on a positive trajectory, equipping them with the skills they need to succeed academically and socially. The Greater Essex County District School Board has assured parents of incoming kindergarten students for years that our speech-language pathologists are an integral part of our early years teams. From supporting pre-literacy and oral language initiatives across classrooms to preparing our school teams to accommodate the needs of our incoming students with complex challenges. We have seen a rise in communication needs following the COVID-19 pandemic, where our young learners were isolated and lived in a world of masks, adversely affecting communication. And this has led to declining vocabulary and oral language skills, which continues to impact students of all ages within our system. But speech-language services are not just about addressing disorders. They're also about promoting communication skills for all students. In today's interconnected world, effective communication is more important than ever. Whether it's collaborating on group projects, presenting ideas to classmates, or engaging in meaningful discussions, students need strong communication skills to succeed in life. Speech-language supports and professional development provided to school teams across the system are aligned and with board priorities and initiatives to support and guide educators to help all students reach their full potential as communicators. Furthermore, speech-language services are essential for promoting inclusivity and equity within our school system. Every student deserves access to high-quality education, regardless of their background or abilities. Marginalized groups and students with disabilities have less access to private interventions and rely on services within schools to improve student outcomes. We strive to provide our students with equal access to learning opportunities, and we nurture this process by helping them to reach their potential in collaboration with all members of the school team. Within Ontario, the majority of school boards do offer speech-language services. The Greater Essex County District School Board has a long history of employing SLPs and CDAs dating back 26 years and then some. This commitment emphasizes the value placed on our services and the recognition of our essential role within the educational system. In Windsor, Essex, there are two agencies, Talk to Me and Children First, who are available to some children with speech-language needs, but only in their preschool years and only prior to entry to school. Access to those community-based services ends when children are school-aged, at precisely the time that they enter kindergarten and begin to face the challenges of a social, language-based learning environment where literacy skills will be a priority. The school speech-language team has been supporting kindergarten language and literacy initiatives for decades and continues to support students in kindergarten and primary grades as a priority. Over the years, speech pathologists from John McGivney Children's Center have never been authorized to support a child's literacy and language skills or language challenges in schools, as outlined in a provincial tri-ministerial agreement. It has always been the school board SLP's role to support these important foundational learning skills. To claim that our services are redundant with community-based services is simply inaccurate and very misleading. The broad range of accessible support provided by school board SLPs and CDAs does not overlap with the medically based services offered at JMCC, and nor are our professional services within our schools replaceable by them. We understand that staff illness creates an ongoing significant replacement cost to the budget, but let it be known that SLPs and CDAs are not contributing to that cost, as our team members are not replaced when they experience personal illness. Please don't eliminate valuable, essential, and integral services from our most vulnerable students when it is known that the cost of our services is very little to begin with and cannot be sustained as a solution to a bigger problem. Do not place this burden on the backs of our students who require speech-language pathology support during their school years. In conclusion, the importance of speech-language services in our school board cannot be overstated. They are by no means a luxury. They are vital, they're timely, they're a necessity, they're essential for promoting communicative and academic success, fostering social emotional development, and ensuring equity and inclusivity for all students. As trustees, leaders, parents, educators, and service providers, it is our duty and calling to prioritize and advocate for speech-language services within all of our schools. When we walk through the doors of the various schools we support on a daily basis, and we see the joy in the eyes of all of our students, we feel we matter. We matter because of these kids, because they are the heart. They're the reason that we are all here tonight, each and every single person in this room. Everyone has a story, and the innate desire to share experiences is the essence of our being. At any age, developmental level, or cognitive capacity, communication presents itself in various forms. As it's vast, it's extraordinary. And however the manner in which one communicates, the process of empowering an individual's human right to express themselves is an incredible privilege to witness and to be a part of. We are committed to continuing our work, advocating for our students and ensuring that every child has the opportunity to succeed. Please consider the weight of your decision. Our students often do not have a voice. Please give them a voice and vote for option 1.
Thank you very much. Do any trustees have a question of clarification? Trustee McKinley, then Trustee Burgess.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, can you clarify how many students John McGivney, speech pathologist, might see in our schools?
So on average, I would say it's hard to say because it would vary by school. However, on average, about 1 to 3 students are seen. But overall, it's a very low number. And some schools don't even have SBRS SLP services in them. So I'd say it's a pretty low number. I'd want to say 2 to 3, but 2 to 3 on average.
Trustee Burgess.
Thanks for clarification again through you, if I could. I'm just trying to figure out because part of our decision making is understanding what the greater community does offer. Mm-hmm. And if we don't, would another board, would another outside agency, et cetera. So I'm trying to figure out what you said. I heard talk to me and another.
Children first.
Oh, right, children first.
Children first.
But did I hear you say that it's only preschool?
Yes.
Both of them?
Yes. Talk to me and preschool are up to kindergarten.
Okay, so once you're of school age.
Yes.
What outside agency outside of private speech paths?
There aren't any.
There aren't any in our Windsor, Essex, except for if you engage
Private.
somebody privately.
Privately, yes.
And privately, is there a whole bunch of people privately, or is?
We have many SLPs that work privately in the Windsor, Essex region, and many families who have to resort to that. The unfortunate thing is that the cost for private services is very expensive, and not many families, especially our marginalized groups, don't have the access to extended health benefits or the resources that a person who might have those resources. So it's very difficult when we have to say goodbye to a student and we know that perhaps the family doesn't have access to further services past a certain point when services are done because of our service delivery model it's getting thinner and thinner. So
that becomes an equity.
it becomes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else for the first time? Anyone over here? Trustee McKinley.
Thank you. Just one other question. I think you started to touch on the expense of a speech pathologist for a parent to go private. Do you have any idea the ballpark that is, other than just expensive?
It's according to Castle Poe. Pardon me? $80 for. Okay, so I just had someone say $80 for 30 minutes, but according to Castle Poe, our regulated professional college, it could be as high as $190 per hour for services.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
P4 is Shelley Dean, please.
Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and trustees of the Greater Essex County District School Board. Mario will help. Thanks, Mario. Andy's not next, right? Okay, ladies and gentlemen and trustees of the Greater Essex County District School Board. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? All right. Ladies, gentlemen, and trustees of the Greater Essex County District School Board. My name is Shelley Dean, and I'm the president of Professional Student Services Personnel, and I'm also a speech and language pathologist. I use the pronouns she and her, and I'm here today to speak in support of the important services provided to students within our board by our social workers, speech and language pathologists, psychologists, and communicative disorders assistants. I respectfully ask you to consider the catastrophic effects of the budget options 2 and 3 on students in our board who require these supports in school. The Professional Student Services Personnel, or PSSP, under OSSTF, proudly represents numerous job classes within the Greater Essex County District School Board, including psychology staff, social worker and reattendance counselors, speech-language pathologists, communication disorders assistants, as well as our First Nations, Métis and Inuit student support workers, and our Change Your Future advisors. These people all have important roles, and they work directly with students across our board. I would also like to acknowledge that June is National Indigenous History Month. This is an opportunity for each of us to learn something new about the history of our Indigenous people and the contributions they've made to Canada and to our local community. We are very proud of our FNMI student support workers and the role they have in promoting awareness in our community. Additionally, I'd also like to acknowledge that June is Pride Month. This is an opportunity for each of us to stand up as allies for everyone in the 2S LGBTQ plus community. And I also want to make you aware that one of our social workers in PSSP is specifically aligned to support students in this community. We are extremely proud of the work she does and are hopeful that her role will not be eliminated as outlined in Budget Option 2. I would also like to take you back 26 years to 1998, to the amalgamation of the former city and county school boards. The city board alone had employed 8 psychology staff, 8 speech-language staff, and 11 social workers. And here we are, decades later, with only 8.3 psych staff, 10.2 speech-language staff, and 15 social work and attendance counseling staff to serve the needs of students across the entire city and the county. The professional services offered within our school board clearly have not sufficiently increased over the years to meet the growing demands within our community. These services are most certainly not a luxury for our students. In fact, they are essential supports for most of our very vulnerable students. The supports provided by our dedicated speech-language pathologists, communicative disorders assistants, social workers, and psychologists are not at all redundant with or replaceable by the declining services within our community. And many students are just not able to access those outside services. Numerous essential programs and services have been closed, including the Infant and Family Program, the Child's Place, the Children's Achievement Center, and Glengarda. Other community services have undergone significant restructuring, such as Talk to Me, Children First, the John McGivney Center, the Regional Children's Center, and Maryvale. Community-based services are not plentiful. Waiting lists have skyrocketed, and the eligibility criteria are more stringent than ever before. As said before, Children First and Talk to Me, they provide the essential services before children enter school, but these services typically end as soon as they enter kindergarten. Over time, many services have been diluted, and our community has lost crucial supports and resources, even as the needs have grown exponentially. Our local school boards have assumed responsibility for these services, and this board has remained committed to every growing needs of our diverse student population. We now have more specialized classrooms and programs like Gains and STEPS. We've hired more support staff. We've invested in literacy-based initiatives like Empower and the Science of Reading. Additionally, we have spent significantly on specialized equipment, resources, technology such as laptops, iPads, color printers, laminators, and software that can be used for the creation of augmentative and communication systems and visual supports for our students with high needs. 10 to 15% of the population will have a communication or a language-based learning problem. We welcome these children with language-based learning problems into our schools, but we need to provide these young students with early intervention so that they can thrive. According to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, 10% of the population has a reading disability. These students receive explicit, goal-directed supports in order to develop reading competency early in their education so that they can transition smoothly from the learning to read stage to the reading to learn stage. These students require professional assessments, individualized programming, accommodations, and modifications in order to survive and flourish academically. Their teachers also benefit from collaborative consultation, resource sharing, and capacity building. These specialized supports are provided by our professional student services teams. The Greater Essex County District School Board also welcomes children with autism spectrum disorders and other complex developmental, physical, and medical conditions into our schools. But again, we need to provide them with the customized supports that they require in order to be successful in their academic environment. These children require substantial support, including those who are nonverbal and rely on augmentative and alternative communication systems, such as speech output devices or picture symbol systems. Many of these students benefit from highly specialized supports and multidisciplinary collaboration between a speech and language pathologist, communication disorders assistants, psychologists, and the medically based services offered by the John McGivney Children's Center. We also welcome students with complicated histories, mental health issues, self-esteem challenges, eating disorders, and those who are victims of poverty, abuse, neglect, and trauma. Only a professional with specialized training should engage in counseling with this very vulnerable population. Inappropriate intervention could potentially lead to re-traumatization. We welcome students who are at risk, who may engage in self-harm, and students who are sometimes violent, but interventions with these students require a highly specialized skill set. These students require professional student services. The Professional Student Services group is largely comprised of regulated, licensed professionals. The majority have either a master's degree or a PhD. The social workers, psychologists, and speech-language pathologists at the board are all members in good standing with their respective professional colleges. The colleges are the licensing bodies. They have strict rules regarding ethics, standards of care, consent, need for ongoing professional development, and insist on the use of evidence-based practices. Our professional student services personnel are exactly that. They are professionals. They all play an important role in supporting students and educators across the system. From daycare observations, transition meetings, school-based meetings, to direct services such as assessment, therapy, and counseling. From indirect support such as consultation, classroom collaboration, to system-wide support such as school-wide and board-wide PD and board initiatives, and collectively our expertise and dedication to our respective professions, students and the school board all serve to help address the diverse and growing needs of our students where they are every day, which is at school. As the president of PSSP, I understand the gravity of the budget decision before you, but a cut in staff is unequivocally a cut in frontline services. Cuts to professional services, both within special ed and mental health, shocking and ill-timed, given the growing demand and the need for more supports within our schools. The children who need us to advocate on their behalf may very well be your own children, grandchildren, or neighbor. Last week, our board was requesting additional funds be approved in support of marginalized groups, outlined in the recent census report, which included students with a broad range of disabilities. Ironically, the budget proposals, options 2 and 3, were presented minutes later, outlining unimaginable cuts to both mental health and special ed services across the board. The services and supports provided every day to students and classroom teams in our schools by our hard-working staff have been a long-standing standard of practice at the Greater Essex County District School Board, as it is in most school boards. Reducing these services calls into question the board's commitment to equity and inclusion. I respectfully urge you to vote with both your head and your heart on this pivotal day for our students. Please consider whether your decision would pass the My Child test. Would you accept a deep and significant cut across so many supportive services if these essentials directly affected your child's well-being and educational success? Please put our children first. Vote on Proposal 1.
Thank you, Shelley, for your message tonight. Do we have any questions for clarification? Trustee Burgess?
Thanks, ma'am. Again, for clarification, if I could, because you mentioned something and it kind of, I don't know, sent a little shockwave, another shockwave, about inappropriate intervention. Now, I don't think you meant to slam colleagues.
No.
But I'm thinking you're talking about other staff, other regular classroom teachers or other support staff or whatever that aren't trained, because that was right where you were talking about the qualifications and the training.
Right. So
and
what I was referring to would be the students who have a history of trauma. And that is a highly specialized area. And sometimes there are well-meaning people that think, well, we just need to talk about this. And that's not how trauma intervention works. And I'm not an expert on trauma, but I know that people can accidentally re-traumatize someone. And we have so many children that have come from histories of trauma, both here and also with the new immigrants that have come.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you. Moving on to Delegation D5, Jacqueline Bissonnette. Please.
I get to raise it up a little bit. That doesn't happen very often. Is it good? Can you hear me? Hello. So thank you, Chairperson Hatfield and trustees. I'm here tonight representing Special Education Services and specifically Psychology Services within the Greater Essex County District School Board. We would like to highlight some information that may help you with the difficult decisions that you're facing. As a department, we advocate for and support the most vulnerable students in our schools. And these include students whose families may not have the means to access private paid services in the community because they're unaffordable or they don't have jobs that provide benefit coverage. Students who do not meet the eligibility criteria for some community services. Students who may actually be eligible for services, but their families lack basic transportation means to get them there. And students who are falling further behind on waiting lists because the service needs of the treatment agencies are stretched beyond capacity. When these students' needs are not addressed, problems only get bigger. Services in our community are vital, and we coordinate with community partners all the time, but it is a partnership. It takes both of us. A lack of appropriate services affects not only the student, but their families and their teachers. Cutting positions places additional strain on teachers and other staff that may not have specialized training. Reduced services can also limit the potential of a student and can negatively impact their future influence in society. For example, even obtaining their high school diploma. A lack of services can also have an immediate impact. For example, did you know that a timely diagnostic assessment can allow parents to access special funding? Research consistently demonstrates the positive impact of school psychologists and student outcomes. We are in the business of promoting student well-being and success, and cutting any special education services means that the very goal of student well-being that we strive for takes a hit. We also have a collective goal of ethical stewardship, and yet the students who will be most affected by a reduction in services will be our most marginalized students. Students like Billy. Little Billy arrives at school not with a sense of excitement, but with a sense of dread and being overwhelmed. He has communication difficulties and finds it really hard to keep up with the pace in the classroom. It makes him anxious, and his little heart beats too fast, which makes learning feel almost impossible. Little Billy is at school to learn reading, writing, and math, but he also is at school to learn how to get along with his friends and to experience success. He doesn't feel comfortable talking to his friends or teachers, so he stays quiet. As time goes on with no support, he continues to withdraw until parents receive the call that Billy is receiving failing grades this year. We have services to understand his learning profile, to highlight that he has lots of strengths and can put things together with his hands, and to better understand things with pictures. We provide consultation to teachers, parents, and Billy himself to help him understand his strengths and how he can build those brain muscles and become a confident learner. If services such as these are reduced, Billy's parents are told that Billy still needs a psychoeducational assessment and that they should seek services in the community. Wanting the best for their child, of course, his parents go through the process of accessing services. At one agency, they are told that Billy does not fit the eligibility criteria. At another agency, they are advised that there is a minimum 2-year wait list. Billy's parents, who do not have private health care insurance coverage, then have to make a tough decision. Do they pay their rent this month? Or do they seek out a more timely assessment in private practice and pay to provide teachers with the information they need to best support their child? Or do they forego the assessment altogether and just hope for the best? Teachers may have suspected a learning disability, but without an assessment, his underlying anxiety disorder continues to impact him. Without services, Billy continues on to high school, and with his self-confidence eroded and his academic knowledge at minimal levels, his attendance starts to drop because he's old enough now to make his own decisions. And he starts to make bad choices just to try to experience success in some way. And before he knows it, he finds himself in trouble with the law. He threatens another student, and it doesn't go well. For youth like Billy, we have services to determine levels of risk and to provide support to change his pathway. So Billy is a representation of the many actual students and profiles that we have supported. Our students need these psychology and special education services to be successful. With cuts, it is not just an FTE position being lost. It is important supports to teachers, families, and each and every student that we serve. We are proud to help the Greater Essex County District School Board achieve the mission of leading excellence in public education by creating confident learners, engaging diverse communities, and demonstrating ethical stewardship. There are some key points that we would like to highlight that are specific to psychological services that we provide. So, did you know that we have multiple psychology staff trained for autism diagnostic assessments and can provide support where community services have at least a 2-year wait list? We provide in-house professional development to teaching staff to support teaching strategies for students with autism, behavioral challenges, and trauma-based backgrounds. Our staff have received training in providing culturally competent mental health services. Each one of our team members comes to the board with a wealth of diverse experience from selective mutism to sexuality. We go above and beyond the role of identification and support. We have recently piloted a brain-computer interface study in a board classroom. Picture this: a young 8-year-old girl who has significant brain damage. She is a nonverbal learner and has limited use of her limbs, so therefore she cannot operate a wheelchair. With brain-computer interface, it's when they hook you up and have all the little things on your head, she is able to control a motorized car, and the pilot study was a huge success. These words do not adequately describe the happiness on her face and the joy that parents and staff felt with her success. Our psych staff recently presented these findings at the Special Education Regional Conference in Niagara. This demonstrates, as a team, we are a leading model of student success and well-being. Decisions to cut staff can cut access to expertise such as this, and expertise on appropriate accommodations and modifications so that every student can access curriculum. We believe in and are proud of our board's holistic model of student success and well-being. We urge that budget decisions be carefully weighed to minimize the impact that cutting staff who work directly with our most vulnerable students may have. Are there other areas that can address budget deficits without cutting services that directly impact students? We hope that we have given you some information that can inform your decisions. Help us support all of our students and all of our Billies, and consider options that will allow us to continue to build tomorrow together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Question for clarification, Trustee Burgess?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and it is for clarification because I don't know what this means. Thank you for that. And you said that, did you know that if you get assessment, because there's long waiting lists, et cetera, but if somebody in our system gets an assessment, it triggers special funding. Does that mean special funding within the school board or special funding through some other intervention that allows them to go somewhere else and, you know?
Both, actually. If parents receive timely diagnostic assessments, they can access funding that supports them. But there's also that can access funding through the ministry that allows for the special education amounts for assistive technology. And I also believe that every identified student brings a stipend, if you want to call it, to the school board.
Any other questions? Thank you very much to the delegations that all presented tonight. I wasn't wrong when I predicted that you would each be passionate and emotional. And I know that there aren't any trustees in the room who disagree with the messages that they heard tonight. Our board in particular has had a long history of advocating for these supports for students in our classrooms. But I can't say that we've been very successful in that role of advocates with regard to provincial funding for these services. So to make sure that the trustees, as well as the guests who have come to hear the meeting tonight, and those who may be joining us on the live stream, under new business, the director and the superintendent of business do have a presentation, or it's included in our package. Their remarks to help us understand our budget challenges as well as our legal obligations under the Education Act to achieve debt reduction. And through their work, they have formulated a recommendation. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Trustee McKinley?
Actually, I'd like to bring forward a different recommendation. If I have someone that would second it, I'd be happy to read it.
We're going to deal with the recommendation first and see where that goes.
I will read it.
And then, no, this one that's printed, that will come first. And if it's defeated, then we can go, you could amend it, you could...
Well, it's not on the floor yet. That's why I'd like to put forward this recommendation instead.
Okay.
Can I see if we get a seconder after I read it? And then if it gets defeated, we can go to the other one.
agenda. So I'm going to look for a motion on this recommendation first and then see where that goes. And then you could make a motion to amend it.
But if it's not on the floor, is there a reason why?
That's why I'm asking. We approved the agenda, so I'm asking if someone wants to put the recommendation on the floor, because we did approve the agenda.
Just a point of order.
Sure, your point.
My understanding is we approve the agenda, but at any time a substitute motion can be made. And I think that's what I hear.
I'm just going by the approved agenda, but since it hasn't been put on the floor, I'll take Trustee McKinley's recommendation.
I'd like to recommend, or make a motion that the board direct administration to prepare the 2024-25 draft budget for trustees' consideration at the Special Operations and Finance Committee meeting that was held on June 4th, reflecting option 1 with a $6.4 million budget deficit representing 1.4% of the board's operating allocation. And if I get someone
I'll
to second
second
that,
that.
I'll speak to it.
Second that.
Thank you. Trustee McKinley, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. Not for a split second do I believe that our current budget deficit is a result of our choices. Our board has always been a fiscally responsible board for as long as I have been a part of it and for many years, even prior to my becoming a trustee for this board. You don't accumulate a $31 million surplus without being fiscally responsible. And I thank our team for that over these years. I do not believe that our board has ever hired employees frivolously. I know that our employees have been hired based on actual needs of our board and our students. According to both OPSPA and CODE, the Council of Directors of Education, short-term supply costs for teacher absences is costing boards close to double the amount provided by the province. For example, in 2023-24, it is estimated that boards will receive approximately $345 million and spend $598 million, resulting in a significant shortfall. Our GECDSB shortfall in this category is over $8.1 million. Statutory benefits such as Canada Pension and employment insurance mandated by the federal government have escalated without corresponding increases by provincial government grants to school boards. Our gap in this area is $5.6 million. Transportation costs continue to escalate without corresponding provincial grants, leaving many boards with significant shortfalls. While there is increased funding for transportation in 2024-25 in recognition of special purpose vehicles as requested by boards, several boards still do not have sufficient funds to cover costs. Our shortfall in transportation is projected to be over $2.9 million. OPSPA and CODE both agree that inflationary costs over a range of budget lines have not kept pace with per-pupil funding grants, with an estimated gap of $776 per student. If our per-pupil funding was increased, even $200 more of this $776 estimated gap, we would realize a $7 million increase to our budget, thus eliminating any budget deficit. The budget, I'm nearly done. Okay.
Okay, but
I've got 10
that's
minutes.
not to the motion because
Yes,
we
this
can't
is all
control
to the
the
motion.
funding.
The budget deficits we are experiencing are far more about the lack of provincial funding that we are receiving than it is about our budgeting. With a supply staff deficit of over $8.1 million between the projected revenue compared to the projected expense, if the province actually funded for all 11 days of sick days, our budget would again not be in deficit. With an operating surplus of over $22 million expected as of August 2024, I feel strongly that now is not the time to make drastic cuts that will affect our students. There are numerous boards this year experiencing budget deficits. However, we are a board with an operating surplus. I truly hope that we choose to make a courageous decision based on our students' needs rather than a fearful decision based on what might happen. My decision will be to use our operating surplus before making cuts that will ultimately impact both students and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion,
I have some questions, so it's, for debate and discussion. That's where I'm at.
Sure.
So the motion is as presented on page 1 as far as maintaining that and not going any further. My understanding, I want to understand this, because we already have a heightened level of scrutiny from the province, and in your budget deficit plan, and my understanding is that for the 24-25 year in your deficit plan, we've already made an adjustment of the $6,419,000 amount. Is that, am I understanding this correct?
That's part of the deficit reduction plan.
It's part of the deficit reduction plan. So I just want to make sure that I understand it completely, because I tried to ask last time and I asked incorrectly, and I think I understand it a bit better. So option 1, as we used to call it at the last meeting, but it's in page 1 on our memo, already shows reductions in staff and programming that brings our in-year deficit plan of $6 million and something and that still leaves us with a 1.4, meaning that there is that, I think you said, the fear of what might happen. 1.4 does mean that the ministry will look at it and say, it's not 1%, so we're going to look at it. They're going to look at it. But we've already made extra cuts to elementary teachers, realignment of French immersion, learning support teachers, RISE teachers, declining enrollment, secondary literacy. The list is there. There's quite a few already. And my understanding, because of collective agreements, et cetera, some folks have already had some notice, and they're probably in this list. So whatever decision we make, we're making cuts, is what I'm understanding. And it's a matter of fewer cuts, more cuts, and a fully balanced and really hard on I think, the most vulnerable students in our system. So to me, it's what we used to call option 1. What we're looking at is the recommendation is what was called option 2. I wouldn't ever consider 3. Hearing from the delegations, I didn't hear a whole lot new, but I did hear some new, and I want to thank them for that, because I'm looking at it from, I heard heart and head, there's a fiscal argument to be said about attendance counselors when you lose them. We used to have a full committee about, recruitment and retention. I know that the pandemic has taken a hit. I know that there are articles, scholarly articles, not just journalistic ones, talking about attendance. Attendance is a real problem globally, and it is rising from the pandemic and post-pandemic. New habits were formed, new levels of despair, new levels of disengagement. I heard about, what happened with masks. That's very true. Getting early speech development and understanding, and I remember reading an article. I think it was Stanford or something, but the vocabulary of it, what a difference in trajectory that makes. I didn't hear that there were outside supports for kids. What I heard was we're one of the few boards in the area, one of the few area boards that can offer any hope for kids who, if they don't get the support, my argument is a fiscal one. It's going to cost us more eventually. We're going to pay. We are going to pay. Paying. We're paying anyway, Madam Chair. So it's a matter of how would you like to pay. So we either pay down the line and more money for trying to make up for what we can't do. We pay in suffering. We pay in lives that have a different trajectory, I think. I didn't hear that there was a lot of excess community supports. I know that the Ministry of Education has given us this funding. We do get funding from other things, but I don't see how us taking a path for what is the recommendation before us doesn't still put us right in the ministry's eyes and not advocating. I understand what you're saying about we haven't been successful, but I think that at provincial level and at the federal level, I've spoken with a few people, just the EI and CPP, that drives me crazy. $5.6 million. That has nothing to do with kids. It's an HR issue. It's a federal issue, and the province needs to flow the money. They flow the money for collective agreements. They should flow the money for this. I know OPS was on it. I think CSBA has to be on it. I think every MP and every MPP, whatever we decide, and next week, whatever we ratify, needs to understand that things completely out of our control are sabotaging our budget and service for kids. And I don't know if I want to go there right now, where I'm saying, okay, we have an in-year deficit. We still have to do the plan for a couple of years, but as if the ministry is not going to give us a look at this. I think our books are clean. I think the need is established. I think that we have some pretty good data. I think that the last few years have been anomalous. We're making up for stuff, and although we're making progress, we haven't caught up completely from pre-pandemic times. And I think that the need, because of that what didn't happen in 2020 and 21 and 22, we're going to be playing catch up for quite a few years. So I think we're going to have a deficit for a few years. And I think that we need to have more advocacy, but I support this motion. I support it because I think we're still reducing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 little things, and some of them are multiples on those lines. I think those reductions are going to make an impact already, and I think that's as far as I want to go. I think that if we state our case to the ministry, with the new ministry, with the new, with the bureaucracy, with the advocacy provincially and federally, I think that I hope to be I hope they can understand us. And if they don't, then those just difficult decisions, I don't think they're going to jump to supervision at the very first second. I think they come down and say, look, you've got to cut more. Then I think we have to do like we normally do with in-year problems. But at this moment for September, I don't want to be able to tell our families that they're going to have 1 quarter less of social workers and attendance counselors, 1 quarter less in, the staff for speech path and CDAs. Well, you heard me, so I think I support this motion. Thanks.
Thanks. Any other speakers? Trustee Sipcar, Armstrong, and Cook. Trustee Sipcar?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to start with just a couple of questions for administration, and I'm going to apologize as they occurred to me this evening and I wasn't able to send them ahead of time. I was just wondering offhand if our administration was able to indicate what was our surplus prior to the COVID years, if they remember, of the 2018 to 2019. And I know Superintendent Armstrong was new that year, so it might not have been off the top of her head. Okay, and then I guess my comment around that, or my thought was, if I recall correctly, we did end up saving a bit of money during the COVID pandemic years, I believe in 2020 and also 2020 to 2021, simply because the schools were closed for so long and there ended up being operational. And so we did accumulate a surplus within those years, correct? Okay, I'm seeing Director Houston shake her head. So I don't need the exact numbers, but I think I just wanted that confirmation because I really dislike the narrative or the term structural deficit as a correct application for the actions of our board over the last 5 years. I think our administration has been exceptional at not only, stick handling the pandemic, but also making investments when they were really needed. And so I think that we've been using that term incorrectly, even though that we have had to run deficits. I think those deficits have been because of the funding, and they've been more of an issue at the provincial level than they have been at individual board levels. And I think we can see that because a lot of boards across the province are facing a very similar situation with this switch to a new funding model, the core funding model. And I think the provincial government, if I could, entertain that and play devil's advocate for a second, will try to make the argument that, some of the positions, some of the things that are considered unfunded that we're considering cutting are not directly related to student achievement and well-being, meaning that, they're not directly related to a teacher in the classroom. But I think what we can hear clearly from a lot of our speakers tonight, but also what we know as just intrinsically, I have a child in school right now. All of us, have different experiences with our education system. We know that those services are actually very core to student achievement and well-being, because without them, students would not be able to participate at different levels in the classroom. And obviously that varies depending on the interventions. And so I fear that with their removal, we'll actually be shooting ourselves in the foot, so to speak, because it would impact our most vulnerable students, who then won't be able to achieve or have a sense of well-being that would contribute to their overall, public education experience. And I just think that as the public education or public board in this region, it is incumbent upon us to make sure that all of those experiences, particularly those for our most vulnerable students, are equitable. And I think with that, I'm very grateful to Trustee McKinley putting forward that motion and her eloquent words. I think she articulated it in a way that I am not right now, but very eloquently, and I appreciate that. And so I just wanted to say that I support the motion. I'm okay with having that conversation with the ministry if and when that time comes. And I think right now I would like to continue to allocate services to our students within the 1.4%.
Armstrong?
I first like to say thank you to Trustee McKinley. I am going to support that motion as well for what for all the reasons that Trustees Burgess and Sipcar have said. I won't repeat those, but I do have a question. I could never support the option 2, where you get rid of the programs and services that we heard about tonight, because as a classroom teacher, I saw the benefits for the kids. So I do have a question. On page 4, at the top, we have 5 funding deficits that are reflected in the preliminary budget. Special ed, we're not going to touch. Supply staff, we can't do anything about. Student transportation's out of our hands. Federal statutory benefits, we can't do anything about. The justice, inclusion, equity, and diversity of over $1 million. Teachers do this anyway. Like, good teachers have always had equity in the classroom, took care of diversity needs, etc. So I'm wondering, I know that's enveloped funding, but why is it listed as a deficit of over $1 million? Could that not go to funding some of the jobs for speech pathologists, etc.? So I'm just curious as to why it is a deficit, and can that money be used elsewhere?
The question on the motion. Yeah. Not to administration. So the question to administration?
I don't know who could answer it, and I'm certainly not criticizing administration. When I saw that, I didn't understand. So I'm going to support Trustee McKinley's motion for sure.
Okay.
I did have this other, and maybe I can ask it after. I'm not sure where to place that question.
So that could be a question for the budget meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. And Trustee Cook?
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank our chair for allowing people to come and speak tonight. I think community voice is so important. I am going to obviously support as I second it. And I would also like to I would also like to take just a minute to thank the social workers, speech language pathologists, psychologists, communicative disorders assistants, student support workers, outdoor education special assignment teachers, and teacher consultants. I don't think unless you understand the importance of these positions, you don't understand what they do. I am a social worker. I'm a proud social worker. And where I work is in intensive services in a mental health facility. I know what goes on. I see kids. I do transitions back into community schools. I know what happens. I know the need for RISE. I know the need for social workers, speech pathologists. There are no resources out there that parents can just walk into and get. If they want a psychological assessment and they want it now, you're looking at, and I could be wrong on this, but it's about $1,500 to $2,000 for an assessment. And I don't know too many people that have that kind of money. Social workers, private practice, some social workers might get a little angry at me, but I think social workers charge too much. They're anywhere from $120 to $150 for an hour or more. That's way too much for a social worker, my opinion. I think that we need to, option one is the only one that I will support. These are our most vulnerable children and they need our help and we all have to stick together.
Trustee Leclerc and then Trustee Buckler.
Thank you. So I think if you're reading the room, we know where we're going tonight. But I want to make a statement that this budgetary crisis was manufactured. It's manufactured by a provincial government that has intentionally starved public education as a strategy to undermine public education. We heard, and we talked about this at the last meeting, I brought it up, $178 would take care of the $6 million. And it's unfortunate that this government has chosen this path. I am concerned that choosing option one will appear to be a victory in the short term. I'm playing the devil's advocate here. I am concerned that it could be a short win because if the government decides to come down and take over, it's not going to be pretty. There's no doubt about it. I am very concerned about losing local control of the direction we're going. But I am committed to public education. I am concerned about, in option two, 11 particular positions, the social workers, the speech pathologists, and the student support workers. I really wish, and I was going to ask if there was another way that we could get to that option two without what seems to be a target on special education. Because if anybody knows me, I've been a very vocal advocate for special education. So I guess at the end of the day, like I said, if you're reading the room, you know where we're going. But I think everybody here needs to collectively agree to stand up to the government and advocate to this government in a very forceful way that public education is an asset that we need to stand behind and support. This government just made a decision to spend $1 billion so you can go and get a beer at a corner store. And it's unacceptable. The priorities are wrong. That decision to spend that $1 billion could have been directed to education. It could have been directed to healthcare. It could have been directed to so many other programs. And as a former police officer, I have concerns about corner store beer, driving crime, but that's another whole story. Yeah, well, it's on the money. Sorry, I am straying. So at the end of the day, um, I'm hoping the decision that's about to be rendered is the right decision. Um, it hurts. It hurts to have to be in such a position. We work so hard to build up a surplus to protect this board, and I really feel that we're under attack. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
I won't take any time. My 8 years on SEAC speaks for itself. There was no way I was touching special education. No way.
I'd like to call the question. The motion on the floor is to file the 2024-25 budget as currently presented with an in-year deficit of $6,419. $6,419,834. And that would be the budget that we would be looking at the budget meeting next week. So, all those in support? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Having reached the end of our approved agenda, I will adjourn the meeting and thank everyone for their time. Good night.